Do you want me to stick this lined up so there's a bit more natural light coming in?
If you want, but we'll just want to make sure we can't get too much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. Right, let's run it anyway.
Well, that's got massive amounts on it.
Right, what we'll do, we're on there since, so what I'm going to do is say, welcome to the Full English Show, and yes, I am sitting here with the bowler-hatted farmer. There you go. So there's a quick couple of questions. Why have you got a bowler hat on?
Well, this was my great-great-granddad's. So my granddad handed this down to me because none of the boys wanted it, and I was always the one who was always at granddad's side doing everything. And so I got handed this down. This was his dad's, and the only time it ever came out of the box was to go to a country show when he would do stewardship of, you know, looking after the sheep or looking after the cows, something like that. So I then got handed it, and he now lives everywhere with me.
I like that. It's unique, isn't it?
It is, and it's kind of. My granddad was very much about, like we just say, you know, he was all about everything what you can see, feel, touch, the earth. He was a herdsman, and for me, this kind of brings him with me. Do you know what I mean? He was the person who taught me everything. My dad was an engineer and had no interest in farming, but my mum's dad was always the one who, you know, come on, we're doing this. So yeah, that was so that's always nice when I put it on. I kind of feel that he's kind of there.
Right. So on the other, so how did you get into farming then? Through your granddad, and was it so? It wasn't part of your old your job where you earned a living, or it has been.
So for me, 5 years old, I had gone. I refused to go to school one day. You know, just started school, refused to go to school. So Mum sent me to Granddad to have a word with me, and they lived a few doors away. So Granddad, who was a herdsman, said to me, he said, right, well, we're now going to work. He said, you can come to work with me, and then you're going to do this, and then you've got to go to school. Okay, Granddad, no problem. So he took me down the farm, and he'd been milking some of the dairy cows. That was all by hand then, and put me on the shoulders of Daisy, which was the matriarch cow, and said, right, you know where the picnic field is? Yes, Granddad. He said, right, Daisy will take you to the picnic field. He said, and she knows what she's got to do. All you've got to do is when she's finished, jump the gate and get yourself to school. Okay, Granddad. So he slapped the cow on the backside. The cow takes off down the road with me bouncing about on the shoulders, hanging on for dear life. 500 other cows trailing behind us. And when the cow gets to the field, Daisy walks right the way around the field and comes back just in time for the last cow to get through the gate, and she clicks the gate closed. I jump the gate and go to school. That's 5 years old. Now you say to people, and I see some videos on social media, you know, about young kids on farms that people go, oh my God, that's so dangerous.
Yeah.
But I'm 57, I didn't die.
No.
So I think I think we've become too pampered and too nannied, really.
No, I agree entirely. I mean, I didn't grow up on a farm, but my mum and dad lived opposite a farm. It was a massive co-op farm in Shooters Hill in a place called Welling in Kent. And I was always fascinated by the farm. I was always over there. I was always looking at different things. I had a slaughterhouse there as well, so you knew where food came from. One of my mates used to work in there. And I always had this interest. And when I went to school, they did a special outing where they took us to a farm, and one of the teachers said, like, I've never seen you so quiet. Why are you so, you know, like, and I was, everything the farmer was saying,
to take it in.
I was like listening to, right? It was different. We was in front of a massive combine harvester. It was a massive bit of machinery, and then you're looking at everything of what they're doing. And I was only probably 7 years old, right? So there's always been an interest in farming. So again, there's a couple of things that we want to cover here. The way in which England, and bear in mind I'm about England, the British refers to a British Union, a political union. You know, my views, most people know what my views are on that. but Norfolk in particular, and farming in general, there has been, and we are under attack. So when I say we, I mean England is under attack for various reasons, which we can go into if you want. But why can you see what's going on? Tell us what's going on with the farming community, what the government's doing currently, and then we'll try and have a look at the history to show that it's notching up, that they're actually gearing up, in my view, to starve us.
Absolutely, 100%. Okay, so my baptism of fire comes back. I'm 21 years old, and a friend comes round to see me. He does some leaflet dropping for me for my business, and I've got a wife and 2 little kiddies at the time, and another one on the way, and he said to me, "We've got to have a word." And I said, "Oh yeah." And Dennis was always, he was a little bit out there. He was a little bit, everyone was like, "Oh, bless him, that's Dennis." And he said to me, "We've got to have a talk about a thing called the 2030 Agenda." And it took him nearly a year to convince me to take it serious, because I laughed at him. I said, "You're fucking mad." And he said, "They're going to stop all the farmers farming." And I said, "Dennis, they're never going to stop farmers farming. Farmers will always want to farm. And as we're seeing, they may want to farm, but they physically now can't farm for 100 different reasons." So I got into the Agenda 2030 and where they were trying to get to it at quite a young age. So I've had, so from my side now over 35 years to try and break all this down. And there's been times in my life I've kind of gone, I need to step away from this because it's driving me mad, to other times where I've gone down the rabbit holes and come out the other side. And what I have found over that 35 years is everything what he predicted is almost upon us, without fail. And a lot of the things what he originally said to me about, oh, they're going to do this in communist style, and they're going to do that, and you're not going to understand, they're going to pay farmers not to produce food, and now everything what I talk about on a daily basis, I can hear him 35 years ago telling me in the background what was going on. So what my concerns are, from where I sit on this, the more research I've done, the more I'm convinced I'm right. And this isn't a case of, people say, "Oh yeah, you've watched a few YouTube videos." I've had 35 years to go down more rabbit holes than people can hope to imagine. And I've studied each one of those rabbit holes. So if I look at farming subsidies, when they came in and how they got people reliant on those, to how they've got people now because of Brexit, we've come away from those and they've not really replaced them with anything. Now they've come in with the best option for the British farmers, right? And I say British because it does affect the whole of the British Isles. They are in a position now that what they're about to do, in my opinion, within the next, I would say 6 months to 18 months, they'll drop the bombshell on the farming and wipe out all the British farmers. That's what I think is going to happen. Now, we all know that they have great views. Our good friend Billy Boy Gates has got all these grand ideas of, we'll have maggots that he controls, we'll have meat that he controls. They've all got this all set out. But what they have underestimated, in my opinion, and things I talk about on my channel, that I only talk about food and farming, and we've got up now to about 50,000 followers who are really dedicated to the cause of wanting to, like me, one, break supermarkets, because I hate supermarkets and how they've treated British farmers, and the other side of that is they're the people, I'm going to say our age, I'm 56, 57 next week, and the people our age still appreciate what good food was. They knew where it came from. I'm thinking, for me...
We still appreciate liberty and freedom as well, because we remember it.
We remember that we could, and I think back when I was a kid, Mum would be in bed, if it was summer holidays, Mum would be in bed, we'd be up at 5, gone out of the house, we'd never take a cup of water, we'd never take a bit of food to eat, and we would be gone until 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. As it starts, the sun's starting to say, "Oh, we better go home." And we would find something to eat in a hedgerow. We would have a drink out of the bloody river, and it didn't kill us, and none of us died. You know, and I think that now I've got a 9-year-old, and you know, God, he's such a. He's brought up by his mum, unfortunately. No, you know, no disrespect to her. She's brought up a lovely child, but if he falls over, he's got to get a baby wipe and wipe his hands.
Yeah.
Where we'd have just gone,
Yeah,
we're done.
yeah,
You know, so I think with the food side, what I've seen is the old generation are the ones who want to protect that, and they want to protect it not necessarily like me. You know, people say to me, "Oh, you know, some of the things you talk about, you'll get yourself killed." I'm 57. I've had a really good innings. If I get killed tomorrow, so be it.
Yeah.
You know, but I've got 4. You know, I've got 4 older kids and a younger one. So I've got 5 children. I've got grandchildren, and it worries me because most of my children don't talk to me because of my outspoken views on things. So as a result of that, you know, I don't get to see the grandkids and so forth. But it doesn't stop me being the parent and the grandparent.
So let me just say this to you as well, because I think this is important for people to understand this, right? What you just said to me is most of your kids don't talk to you because of your outspoken views. That proves to me that they are the product, right, of a state education system.
Absolutely.
And I want people who's watching this to understand this, or to listen to this phrase, because it's crucial, because this is about communism. That if you send your children to a Roman school, don't be surprised when they come back supporting Caesar, right?
Yep.
So state education and the manipulation of the state, right, and the education system and the communist system is why your children are like that. Because the way I was taught, not necessarily by school, and there was a conversation earlier, it's funny how we're always the ones being caned and being thrown out of school and all that, because we was the ones who would not comply. Yeah. Right? We was the ones who think for ourselves, that use our own cognitive ability with our eyes and our ears. The problem we've got at the moment is propaganda, because people are watching and seeing things coming through TV channels, some YouTube channels, in fact most of them, and it's propaganda and it's bullshit. And they're the ones that they're allowing that to propagate. But getting back to that conversation that we started about the farming system, and one of the things that you've mentioned is Agenda 2030, which is very real. People can go, if they only did their own research,
Absolutely.
they can go and actually read it.
You haven't even got to go down the rabbit hole.
No, it's there.
You've only got to see the rabbit hole. It's got it written on the top of it.
and I do laugh, because all of these people, I'll give you another example of that. Currently we've got a situation with rape gangs all over England, and it's the rape of England, not the rape of Britain. And when Elon Musk, for example, said, have you read these transcripts of the trials and what they did to these girls? That is torture, right? And loads of people say, no, I haven't read that. And they're also so-called experts, barristers, lawyers, solicitors. No, I haven't read that. And you're just making a mountain out of a molehill, right? The same people saying, I haven't read the transcripts, but we are denying this happened and it wasn't as bad as you said it was, are the same people that during COVID said, we're not listening to these other doctors who were qualified, that were actually showing you the evidence, right? So getting back to Agenda 2030, which is crucially important, this is about communism, right? The easiest way to kill people is to starve them to death, right?
And it's been proven.
And it's proven, right? So again, if you go back and look at the history of the Soviet Union, 17 million estimated people died through starvation, concentration camps, etc. But what people really need to understand is there is a process that's put in place for this to happen. It doesn't happen overnight, right? And what people really need to understand is what you've just said about Agenda 2030. You had a conversation with someone when you was 21, and they were saying, have you read this Agenda 2030? And the fact that all of those things are coming true, what does that mean? It means there is a strategy and a plan in place, right? Because when you go back and look at that, so part of my experience of life, so anyone watching this, because I grew up opposite a farm, and near me there was another place, it was a greengrocers, and they had a massive distribution warehouse. It was called Weeks's, right? And what happened was all the farms, their lorries would go out and they'd go to the farms and they'd pick up the spuds and they'd pick up the fruit and they'd take it back to a distribution warehouse. It would then be distributed not to supermarkets, but to greengrocers and fruiteers, right? Who were secondary and first positions on normal high streets, and then everyone would come out. You didn't have fridges and freezers like we've got today. People would buy their food every 3 or 4 days. They'd have a larder, not a fridge. The point being, it was a resilient food distribution system, right? So you had the farmers to the food distributors, and they was all businesses in their own right, all making money in their own right. Then to the retailers who were individual family, it was your skill set, being a greengrocer, right, or a butcher, or a fishmonger, and a candlestick maker, right? And it was all about the high streets and community, right? From the hops that come from the farm, to the pubs, to the brewing, and again, brewing was one of the biggest industries, again destroyed by the British. People need to realise, and this is partly what this conversation is about, because you are technically a farmer, right? Why I say technically is because you live on a farm, right? Whether you've got a bowler hat on, I actually like that. I think it's quite a statement to make, right? But you understand the story, but more than that, you understand the how the system used to work, right? So from gender, you've gone from starting the process with Agenda 2030 to understanding there is a strategy, and from that plan, now you can see that they're doing everything, right? So the strategy, during the First World War and the Second World War, they discovered that England was food independent, it was food resilient, and its distribution network, and Napoleon used to describe England, right? Not Scotland, not Wales, England, right, as a nation of shopkeepers, and that was part of it. So why this discussion is important is because people need to understand there was a strategy and plan, and it's still in place and they're still doing it. So if you can explain how this is affecting, why did the supermarkets, what happened, how did it happen? I've explained this a million times, but it's good to speak to someone who actually knows it and has got experience of it.
Okay, let's backtrack. So, firstly we talk about the strategy they're using. So, it's well documented that whether it be Russia or China, what happened was they got the farmers to a point of breaking, where they taxed them out of existence, they messed about with their ability to buy seed, everything else, exactly what we're witnessing now. And there's relevance to me saying what I'm going to say.
By the way, they've done that with the pubs as well.
Right. So, what they then did was needed to turn the public against the farmers, right? And that's the bit we're now going to see. So, on the 17th of January, the farmers are going to go and protest outside supermarkets, right? And that will be ignored like all the other protests. What will happen is then they will decide to go to the next step. And the next step will be to start barricading and blockading supermarket supply chain depots, right? And each time we go down this road of getting a little bit further in on the farming side and going, everyone agrees they've got to do something, right? But I can see what they're doing is being guided, and I think we said earlier that you were at the first Farmers Rally in London, same as I was, and it was so controlled, it stunk, right?
I walked away from it in the end.
Well, I did.
That's how bad it was.
I said to Gloria, I said, come on, and I messaged everyone who was on the bus with us. I said, have you seen enough? I'm going home. And I was like, okay, I'll get a taxi if you're not coming. And whatever, but I ain't staying. Right? Everyone was the same mindset. Everyone got on a bus. We left 2 hours early.
So there were 2 different types of farmers there, right? And that's the thing that people need to understand. There was the establishment farmers that are part of the system, and there was what I describe as real farmers. They're us. They're working people just like us.
So what I think is going to happen is we're going to see a kickback from the public when food becomes short, and then the government will be able to blame the farmers for what's going on. They'll let food run completely out to the point of people starving, and then we'll go, oh, we've got a solution. And that solution will be you'll eat bugs and be happy.
Yeah.
Right? So, what I would like to see, and I guess this is kind of my, if I put most of my life, as much as the farming, I've been a greengrocer all my life. So for me, I'm a fruiter trained, professionally trained fruiterer. So for me, we need to get the public to understand, those who want to understand, our generation, what they can do about stopping this in its tracks.
Yeah.
Right? Now, for me, the biggest thing that the public can do to stop this is stop fucking well supporting supermarkets.
Yeah.
Because they have done more damage to the farming community than the government will ever try to do.
Right, just to make sure I'm going to emphasise this, right? After the Second World War, we see the proliferation of supermarkets to destroy England, right? People need to understand that we did not win the war. We lost the war because we fought against the Soviet Union and then sided with them, right? So at first we was against them, then we was with them, but the Soviet Union are communist, right? And people need to understand there is a difference. I am not suggesting in any way that the Nazis, right, as they was known, they're both groups of socialists.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But siding with the actual communists to beat the Nazis, right? You sided with the bigger enemy, right?
Yeah.
And people don't realise that the communists are the ones who starved people, a lot more people, and the Nazis were technically against communism, right? So again, I'm not suggesting, again, I'm quite outspoken about this. I'm not saying Hitler was an angel, nor was Churchill, nor was Stalin, nor was any of them, right? What I'm trying to do is point out that the strategy of what's going on now is communist in nature, and it stems, and the European Union is communist in nature, not Nazi. The WEF is communist in nature, not Nazi. And it all goes back to another group of people, which are called the Fabian Society and the International Fabians, right? And when people understand that this is a plan, and when you look back strategically at what they've done, so one of the things that I do, that you'll probably be aware of, is the common law constitution and the constitution of England. Right? And one of the things I do with that is reverse engineer and look at strategically what they had to put in place to achieve their goals, right? And that's why they don't like me, right? Because what I do is actually show through history what they've done. So getting back to you being a fruitier, I knew fruitiers and greengrocers when I was younger. It was a proper trade.
Absolutely.
It was part of retailing, but it was an extension of farming, right? Yeah. Because you had to know your produce, how it was produced, you know, how it had to be stored, whether it was going to go off and you was going to lose money. It was a highly skilled job, right? Yeah. So again, we need to show people or tell people why this is so important, and again, so it's taking it straight back. Just a little bit of illustration on that. Supermarkets, taken away from the high street, shutting down the high street. Government then created, and it's all linked, right? And everyone needs to understand that, council tax. The council tax is linked to shutting down the high street because they shut down, what they've done, the central government, communism, took all the money from the local communities, from the local councils and the business rates. That meant that the councils had to raise money in another way. So the government authorised something which is technically illegal, which is council tax. Then they started creating situations where people had to pay to be in the high street, and it drew the people out of the high street, started to destroy the high street, started to destroy the pubs and the communities. That is all communism.
And it's all very much part of breaking that community, and not just, and I did a talk last night with a church group, and one of the things I was saying on there was that this has been about breaking religion. It doesn't matter what religion, I don't care what religion, it's about breaking religion. And that is about breaking people's belief. Right, so we're breaking the family union, we're breaking the community spirit. So this is all about everything, and at the centre of all of these things is a supermarket. And I don't care what anybody says. So if you look at the control they've now got, you know, when we've gone from having I don't know, let's say 100 small businesses in an area, and we've got, you know, whether that's the guy who cuts keys, you know, the guy who does engraving on jewellery, the guy who's the greengrocer, the butcher, the baker, councilman, the fishmonger, everybody else, the grocer, whatever it was, and you'd have all these little shops all over the place. They've desecrated that.
Yeah. All independent businesses.
All independent.
Independent of the state, which is another reason why they don't like trades.
Why they don't like them.
Right? And that's why Tony Blair and the Labour Party, was created by the Fabian Society. Who funded the Fabian Society? The Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. Right? So when you start to look at the strategic plan that they put in place, which is communism, right? It's been going on for centuries, right? And it is a multi-generational plan. And one of the things, not Karl Marx, but Engels said, right, was that every communist revolution has been shipwrecked on the rock of England. Mm-hmm. Why did he say that? Mm-hmm. Why did he say England? And it's because of our common law jurisdiction. So when people call me a communist, I laugh at them. Then they call me a Nazi, and I equally laugh at them. I said, I'm not a Nazi and I'm not a communist.
Yep.
I am an Englishman,
yep.
And we do not believe in authoritarian control. We never have done. We have rebelled against it throughout our history, including the Peasants' Revolt. All the way through history, it's the English that have stood up against tyranny.
Yep.
Right? So, and again, even if you look at the revolution in America, it was the Englishmen that stood up against the British, right? So, getting back to the supermarkets, I agree with you entirely. They are the nuclei, or the nucleus, of the strategy to destroy England. The food chain is important because part of the communist system is to starve you to death, right? And people need to understand it is a lot cheaper for the state, right, to starve you to death than execute you or do any of them things that people think that they do in the background. That by far the greatest killer in the world has been starvation under communist regimes.
Well, the great thing about starvation is that within a day or two of people not being fed, they'll turn on each other.
Exactly.
And that's what they want.
Exactly.
That's how you get rid of a lot of people.
Right, so again, I'm going to go back to this because strategically it's very important, and you are absolutely right that the core or nuclei of that strategy is supermarkets. You've only got to go and have a look at the supermarket chains and see who owns them and operates and runs them in the background, right? People need to understand something, right? You can't do that. So there is something in the supply chain. So bearing in mind, my background is system engineering, right? So I look at the system. It doesn't matter what system it is. I will look at the system. And no, I haven't been trained by a university, right? We've been in the company of some people who've been with university degrees, etc. Most people who know me, the first thing I say is I don't like people with university degrees, right? Because their minds have been trained in a certain way. And unless they are free-minded people and free-thinking people, they don't get what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So, and anyone can regurgitate the state and get a 1-1, right? If it was me and I was taking on people and they had to have a degree, I'd be looking at the ones with the 2-1s, not the 1-1.
I was going to say, I'd be looking for someone who's dyslexic or autistic.
Exactly.
Every time, because they're free thinkers.
so the free thinker, and generally speaking, plumbers, electricians, trades, they're all people who go out and earn a living themselves. So I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about here with the supermarkets and why it's important. Go back to the way England used to do it, right? And we can go back to that system, right? The supply chain was good enough and it was resilient enough,
and robust
that
enough.
Robust enough that if something went wrong, people still had food in their cupboards.
Absolutely.
Still people in their larders.
Yep.
They had their own chickens. They had their own, in some cases, geese.
Yep.
Right. They had their own allotments in the back garden.
Yep.
Turned their own earth and grew stuff. They done all of these things, and right. You then had the distribution centres that had the food, and you had the farmers and how they used to store everything. Right. So why it's important to emphasise that, because this is coming back to the analogy with supermarkets being the core of their strategy to destroy England, right, food chain, and starve us to death, is simply because that system is what they call just in time.
Yeah.
supply chain, right? If anything happens to that supply chain, if anything happens to the farmers on that side of the supply chain, if anything happens on the network of rail, road, etc., on that supply chain, your food is gone. If you live in a city,
you're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, and I would say that's where we are now. I would say that one of the things I'm finding through the audience that I've got on my social media is that a lot of people who are living in the cities are starting to wake up to what's happening.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who are really getting concerned. And I always say, people say, you suggest get out of the city as quick as you can.
Should be worried.
You should be not only worried, you should be terrified.
Yeah.
And within the next few months, and I see, we're at a precipice with this. That the whole thing is about to collapse.
Yeah.
And I don't think that people are really yet, despite all of the people like us talking about this, people are still not genuinely, in my opinion, believing this is going to happen.
They won't do their own research.
No, and they won't. And I think...
And we're described, so in the medical profession, people like us, who do our own research, do our own thing, and go and read the medical papers, etc., then people would be called quacks.
Yeah.
Right? And they use this terminology to try and discriminate against you and make out that you're some sort of lunatic.
Yeah.
When in fact you're not. All you're doing is repeating the evidence that you've seen of it.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting because pre-pandemic, when my children were talking to me, and this is what I find the ironic side of this. So pre-pandemic, 2 weeks before the pandemic started, I messaged my children on a WhatsApp group and I said, right, I know you're going to think Dad's a bit out of the way here, but please take notice of what I'm going to say. Within the next 2 weeks, they're going to shut the world down and we're never going to go back to where we started. There is going to be horrendous food shortages because the supermarket supply chain is not going to stand this.
Correct.
But this is a trial, and understand this is a trial. So what I ended up with was my oldest daughter come back to me and said, yeah, Dad, I'm absolutely got the pantry stacked up. I've been thinking this is coming, don't worry. The next one down, old Dad, you are funny. I live on an army base with Chris, and we've no chance of us going hungry. My youngest daughter said to me, oh Dad, she said, you're funny. She said, I've just been at Tesco's, I've got loads of food.
Yeah.
My son, who lives with my daughter and her husband, said, well, I ain't got to worry, Lavinia does the shopping. And that's,
that's their mentality.
Right? And so within, let's say 3 weeks, it wasn't 3 weeks, but I'd got a message from my youngest daughter's daughter to say, Grandad, we haven't got any food in the house. I said, well, why didn't Mummy ring me? Mummy daring, because you tell her off. You're right, I would. She needs telling off.
Yeah.
So, how did we get? And I'll go around and I'll come back to this because it's important, right? That we drum this home. So, when that all kicked off, I was running a farm shop, right, on another farm I had, and the farm shop took £100 a day.
Yeah.
And every week we sold 10 vegetable boxes.
Yeah.
Okay, and within inside 2 days, we sold £30,000 a day and sold 400 veg boxes a day. And it went up and up and up and up, right? Supermarkets couldn't deal with what was going on, right? They crashed to the ground. I got on the phone and phoned all the farmers I knew and said, what have you got? And they said, oh, actually, Mark, we've got potatoes, or we've got this, we've got that, or whatever it might be. I said, I've got cash sitting here waiting for you. Now, that one was the one what really sparked imagination, right? So farmers going, oh, well, that's all right. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. If you've got some cash, I won't send them cauliflowers to Tesco's in their broken system. You come get them, and I'll have your cash now instead of in 120 days, 150 days time, right? So we'd go and we were dealing. And I'd gone to one potato farm and I said to the farmer, I said, like, I just can't keep up. We're going to get 60 bags on the van at a time. And I said, like, I've already got the next 3 van loads sold. And he said, would it help if I bought an Arctic load over? Now, bearing in mind, we'd normally sell 5 bags a week. Yeah. And suddenly someone wants to rock up with like 1,000 sacks of potatoes. And I'm like, well, we're going to sell them with no trouble. Yeah. Right? So he turns up. Within 24 hours, we've sold 1,000 sacks of potatoes. Yeah. and we watched it go up and up and up, and then the supermarkets gradually got things sorted out. They allowed people to go shopping again. They allowed people, and I say allowed because that's how the public saw it. Oh, we've been really lucky to let us out again.
Yeah.
I can honestly say there was not one point in that entire bullshit that I ever once put a mask on, never once did I ever take any notice of what they told me.
Just to make sure you understand. So where I live on the second floor, and Nigel Farage, in his moment of madness, was banging his pots and pans outside his house, and there's videos of it, right? And I was encouraging all these people to come out on a Thursday night at 6 o'clock, and everyone was standing, right? When all of my neighbours did that, I opened my windows. I've got a massive loudover, and I was literally shouting at them, "Stop clapping like seals for your own demise. What is the matter with you people?" Right? And people didn't understand what was going on. I said, "You're all being psychologically brainwashed, right?
Programmed.
You're programmed. That's completely right." So again, you see a situation where when the system was broken, the supply chain started to break. People had to try and return back, right? Which means it's a bit like computerised systems. So as a systems engineer, you don't have to computerise every element of a system, right? Sometimes in life, it's much better to have a human operator or human interaction with that system, right? So in that system, it's a bit like going back to the old. Does everyone remember the Rolodex? Right, you used to have a Rolodeck with telephone numbers on it, right? And as you go through them, you'd ring someone and say, "Oh yeah, but Rolodeck, there's a number after." And in the old days in sales, you could have a Rolodeck full of people that you'd speak to, and you had to go through it as part of your Rolodeck every day, right? You're going back to the old system because the old system hasn't failed. It still works, and it will work, and it is robust, and it works under any stress situations. Even in war, which is what happened with us. That's why they had to destroy this system. So again, getting back to that, so one of the things that is frustrating about the whole COVID BS is the way that the people, many of us, come out on the streets, the real food thinkers, was out there, over 1 million people marched. None of the mainstream media would show that anywhere. We was all showing people this is wrong. Rebels on roundabouts, which was fantastic. Stand in the parks, fantastic. But then it appears that when the government has normalised things, a lot of these people have just drifted back, and they think it's all over. That it's not over.
No. It's what I say. Like I said to my kids, this is a dry run. And what in my opinion, what happened was the supermarkets were part of playing out the system. So they dropped it from the health side to see how far they could push people on the health side. They dropped the food side to see how far they could push people on the food side. And as the people started, and I think what happened was that a lot of the farmers, because of what they've always done, well, we grow stuff and we sell stuff. If someone knocks on the door at 5 o'clock in the evening and says, "Got a bag of potatoes, Bob," they go, "Yeah, absolutely. Took a £5. Christ, I've had a right result," right? And the farmers and the greengrocers and the butchers and the bakers and candlestick makers adapted really quickly to what happened, like we did, right? I was speaking to friends all over the
so it's a bit like the internet again. Another analogy. When they first started, and by the way, it's an English invention, computers. Going back to Charles Babbage. When the government initiated mainframe computing, and they soon realised that weren't the way to do it, because anything that's centralised will fail, right? And that's how the internet came about, right? And then the networks of independence, right, of these systems. So if one went down, another one's still there and controlling, right? So it's really important to emphasise that, and that's why the high streets were so important. Let me just get this, because you've touched on it, and there's something else that I've talked about, reverse engineering, to look at the law, right? Going back through our history, you can see what these people have done, right? And it is all structured to destroy England and the common law system, right, which give you the greatest amount of freedom. One of those things, and it about farmers, what else have they done structurally? Not just, so you've got the supermarket system, but part of that system is they then impose their regulations and laws on farmers. And they restrict farming and the way that we've always operated, a bit like, so there'll be people watching this now that will understand what I'm saying. You've been a bus driver or a coach driver or a lorry driver for 30 years, and then all of a sudden some idiot says you need a certificate of professional competence, and you say, listen, I've been driving this wagon for 30 years, and now you tell me, after no accidents, never hurting anyone, never injuring myself, now I need a certificate of professional competence.
And the person who's telling you that was university trained.
University trained.
Probably never done a day on the job.
No.
And there lies the problem, and we're seeing this with the farming community. So you've got people like, my great-great-granddad and so forth, going back through the generations. They were people that from birth knew the job, right? So no one could tell them how to bring up cows or breed pigs or look after sheep because they knew. They didn't need anyone to go. They didn't need to go to college. For me, I went to university, and no sooner did I finish university for agriculture, literally just down the road, I came to the conclusion that was a waste of fucking time. There was nothing they taught me that I didn't already know, or that I knew better than the instructors who were teaching me. And I wasn't the only child there who was getting that education. So, but what I do think, out of all of this, of the farming side, what worries me more than anything is with the destruction of farming comes the death of the knowledge. Right? And that's important.
Agreed.
That's important, that you've got to have the death of the knowledge. Because if you look at people who can bake,
well, that's one of the reasons. So again, I don't want to interrupt your thought process because this is really important. That's what one of the things that Tony Blair did. He removed traditional apprenticeships, right? And the reason he did that was to destroy the trade knowledge that was passed down from son to boy, right? And through that system, it made tradesmen independent of the state. So when you go and look at a plumber, a bricklayer, a roofer, a tiler, whatever the trade is, they can go and earn a living, and they didn't go to university, right? Go and have a look at any. So one of the things that's really important for people to understand is the university system and the state system of education currently set up is a communist system. The reason why they extended, that's why you get all these nonsense degrees now, is because they didn't
science.
Well, they didn't create employment, which is so it's the government's job to create the environment for job creations, not to create the jobs themselves, right? And especially not. So what they did was they took these kids out of school at 16 and 18 because there was no jobs for them, because they'd already destroyed the economy, they'd already destroyed the way that England was operating. They needed nonsense degrees, right? The only real degrees out there are engineering degrees, farming degrees to some extent, where they're teaching you about the soil and the way it operates, etc. But you don't have to teach someone how to operate a fucking tractor, right? Or how to get produce from A to B, because they know how to do that, right? So the important thing is for people to realise that this is all part of the same system, and core to that system in destroying what you just said is knowledge, right? So again, the regulations and everything that they've brought in, can you sort of try and explain that to people? Because I don't think people realise the depth of it.
Okay, well let's look at the one what's really easy, and let's look at bird flu, right? So we know as a farming community it's bullshit, absolute bollocks. There's nothing at all that is. One bird in 20 million will die.
Foot and mouth.
Exactly the same. Blue tongue as well. Blue tongue, I remember Grandad would say, well, the cows get a cold. They sneeze and now they put them down. Well, it's like saying, well, if you sneeze, we're going to put you down. So what they did was to bring in these quarantine rules, and to get people to buy into it. What they do is they go, we'll incentivise a farmer to make that call. So let's say someone like, Bernard Matthews. They get to the 12th of December, when they know they're not going to sell any more turkeys. and they get an outbreak.
Oh,
Right? They call in DEFRA. DEFRA says, oh, absolutely, you've definitely got it.
And they claim on the insurance.
Claim on the insurance. That DEFRA will pay them out, and they'll wipe out 150,000 birds in one go, removing the problem for Bernard Matthews. Right? Now, if the nearest farm to that is 20 miles away, and you need an excuse for that farm to get it, you haven't got one. Right? You haven't got one. It don't matter what you do, you can't get that bird flu onto that farm, right? Without people questioning it. So this year what they did, or tail end of last year, was brought in the fact that everyone has to register their birds at home. Right? So how do you get it from that farm to that farm? Oh, well, we know this person's got chickens, and then that person, and that person, and that person, these 50 people along the way. Now we've got 20 miles down the road, we know how it got here. What it did was did that. So they've all got to be cold as well as this lot now.
So the registration of them chickens is like them creating a waypoint effect all the way to the other farm.
Did I say that? Maybe I did. And exactly the same. So that's the basic one, because most people can think, oh, well, I've got 5 or 6 chickens in the garden, you know, and I ain't freaking register them, right? The reason they want you to register them, do I think they're going to find anybody?
It's because they're going to get, it gives them an excuse.
It gives them the excuse to get to this other farm. Now, if I name Bernard Matthews as an example, or any other big organisation that's in the food production, right? If they lose 170,000 birds in one hit, does it affect their bottom line? No. Even if they only get back the money the birds cost, they've got their money back, right? What does that do to the value of the meat? It puts the value of the meat on their other farms up. Right?
Supply and demand.
But when you've got little Joe Bloggs over here who's only got 30 chickens, and DEFRA turn up and kill them and says, well, you know, your 30 chickens have got to go, and there's £200 for your chickens. The £200 is neither in nor there. I wanted me 30 bloody chickens, right? So what they've achieved is allowing the people to get scared of what's out there, which is nothing. You know, it's a bit like kids being told to be scared of the dark. You know, when you're kids, you don't go out there because it's dark, but right? My mum used to send me out in the dark. You get out there. Your eyes will adjust. And that's where we are now. Those of us what have looked above the parapet, our eyes have adjusted to what's actually going on. And we've got the rest of the people still sitting there in the dark going, oh, dare I go out there? So, and you're coming back to what you're saying about the apprenticeship side. We've seen, I know this is going slightly off key, but we've seen that over the last 10 years especially, you've got kids what would have left school at 16, let's say, either went and got a job or went home, right? And mum and dad would eventually get them out the door to go and get a job, right? What we've now ended up with is, I'm not allowed to work till I'm 18, right? So all of those kids what have then gone to college to learn a bloody bullshit degree, which takes them not only to 18, that's just to get them out of college. Now they've been told to go and get a degree. So you now end up until they're 21, 22, 23, getting these degrees. My nephew, the most qualified person I've ever known, that qualified, he can't even get a job in McDonald's. They won't give him a job.
He can't learn anything.
He's not only got a master's, he's got a bachelor's, he's got everything else. I feel for him because he's come out in thousands of pounds worth of debt after going to uni. For what? And that, I think, is where... And so what they ended up doing was, as the economy was being destroyed, people haven't necessarily realised, because you haven't got thousands of kids sitting on street corners.
Can I just want to say this here, because it is important, right? In reference to the British Union system, the people in Scotland don't pay for university degrees. There is no debt. It is only the English that pay for that.
Wow.
The same as in Scotland. Don't forget, Scotland is a socialist country. In Scotland, they don't have to pay for their prescriptions. The English do, right? So, and again, this is not me having a go at the Scots. This is me just making sure people understand that. So again, it's an attack on the English, because your nephew's come out massively in debt when a Scot hasn't. And they're in a socialist system, and all sitting there saying how lovely it is and how rovey it is. Well, it is, because it's the English economy paying for it.
So would I be right then, based on that, with the assumption that, and this has always been my assumption, all the thousands of kids what have come out of university owing hundreds of thousands of billions of pounds between them, at some point when they slide us completely into socialism, what they'll do is they'll say to all these people, listen, what we'll do is we'll write all this debt off. That's what's going to happen, I think. Because if we write all this money off, admittedly, you know, you might have to abide by these rules now.
Yeah, no, they will do that.
Right, but you don't owe that money anymore. You know, you've gone away, you've got all these degrees and everything, and unfortunately there's no work for you. But here's another option.
Yeah.
And I see that with whether that's currency.
Yeah.
I pay for everything in cash.
Yeah.
The minute I get paid, I get the bank take everything out, what I don't need for direct debits, and then I use that to pay everybody. Yeah. And my mum says to me, gosh, she's doing my head in. But for me...
But again, you've hit another nail on the head there, right? People have got used to something called convenience.
Yeah.
And that convenience is that is the nemesis of, and will destroy your freedom.
Yep.
Right? And again, it's the convenience of having a supermarket. Really, it's now the convenience of having your food delivered.
Yeah.
Or your Just Eat, and you're using your Just Eat, and they're gonna deliver you. You ain't even got to drive to that terrible place called McDonald's.
Yep.
Someone's gonna deliver it. Right? and any form of fast food, any form of processed food is bad for your body.
Well, there lies an interesting thing. One of the projects I'm working on at the moment, we've launched this food hub. So we've launched a website called foodfindershub.co.uk. The idea is that it sits between the farmers, growers, butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, and all the smaller people, and the consumer, the customer who wants to buy that produce, right? As a way for people to find food. Now, one of the things I've always been riled about, and I do, and it grinds my bones, is the fact that if you take the bit in between the farmer and the customer, it's a supermarket. It's not a supermarket. What you've got is a supply chain that, as it works its way through the system, they add all the poisons, all the components they want you to have. Yeah. So whether that's, you know, if you look on a lot of, I think, I certainly think, you know, that supermarket, what every little hurts, they worked on the philosophy that there's, I think, last count it was about 105 items what are on the shop shelves have now got cricket flour in rather than real flour. Yeah. Right? People are not aware about it. Right? Colourings and different things, what they've changed from additives to critter dyes and things like this, right? So what we're seeing is, in between here and here, is the bit what's killing everyone, right? And I don't care if that's mRNA, right? Because we know that's going into the food supply chain by the animals, right? We know all the shite what's coming down from above, from chemtrails, is getting eaten by the animals or swallowed up by the vegetables, right? And then given to people. So anything you can do to remove that supply chain needs to be done really quickly. And that's why I talk about, you know, crashing supermarkets and getting out the door. So now, on from that, for me, my research, you know, you've been over on our veg beds today, my research is that my granddad did certain things that I could not understand as a youngster, right? And now, as an older person and someone who's gone down the scientific route of trying to explain why Granddad did things, whether that be putting a bit of copper wire around the post to get the energy into the ground, whether that was having a water butt that had stinging nettles and comfrey leaves in it, so you made a tea to give you compost. All the vegetable waste always went onto the compost heap. There was horse manure added. All of those things what helped build the bio of the soil and put the vitamins and minerals back into the ground. That is what we need to do, because the food this bit what's in the supermarket chain, right, is stripping it of everything what's any good, right? Now the ground as well on most of these big farms, and a classic example is here on the farm we're on here, had our soil tested 9 months ago. It's got 5% life in it, right? And that is because of over farming. And coming back to what you were saying earlier, can I give you some examples of how farmers have been pulled to bits? So, here's a classic. We produce a grain
Yeah.
on the farm that we could either do one of two things with. We could keep some of it, like we always have, and then next year we use that for our seed, or we can go for a new system which has been offered to us, like 50 years ago, where we give all the grain to the seed company, and they treat it, and they make sure it's not going to get any bacteria or any nastiness happen to it, and they sell us 20% of it back. And then we set that, and we go again, right? So we've ended up with GMO'd seed, and now you've given you the GMO seed, you've got to use the GMO fertiliser to go with it. So nitrogen. You're also going to have to use glyphosate to keep the weeds down. Now the glyphosate won't affect the grain because it's been GMO modified, but it will stop all the weeds, right? So you haven't got to worry about the weeds, you just go across it and spray this. Now, yes, there is the problem that using the glyphosate will change the protein in the food, so now everyone thinks they're allergic to wheat, where they're actually not, and say, oh, I can't eat that, I'm gluten-free. No, you're not. I'll guarantee you're not allergic to gluten, you're allergic to the protein change in the food, right? So, that is a classic example. We've changed how we used to do it. We used to go out and put horse manure on the field, we'd plough that in, we would then drill seed what we kept, we would then, you'd have people out there, like my granddad would spend 18 hours a day with a hoe going down rows of sugar beet, chopping out and cutting the weeds out, right? Don't have to do that now, just spray it. But all that spray is going in the ground, killing the ground. So,
and that's affecting the mineral uptake into the plant.
Absolutely. Now what I was going to say is a lot of people have had the conversation with me about people who grow food, saying one of the big things I'm really, really worried about is last year we had really low pollination. Why was that? Well, because there wasn't any bees. No, there was plenty of bees. Let me absolutely tell you categorically, loads and loads of bees. However, I don't know if you've ever studied bees. Here's a beehive. The first 2 or 3 bees will come out of the hive.
I need a bees.
Right. Their job, as you'll know then, is to go and find the biggest food source, right, which is on the bee line. And the reason they call it the bee line, right? Their job is to find the biggest food resource. So what do? Do they go and scavenge around all the hedgerows, right, which they've always done for a million years, right? Or, oh, hang on a minute, boys, there's a banquet over there. Someone's only gone and set 100 acres of wild flowers for us, right? You want to find bees and insects? Go there. There's thousands of them, right? So that's what that was about. The reason they paid farmers so much to produce nothing was not about producing nothing. It wasn't about paying the farmers for that. It was about taking the bees away. And they'll do the same again this year and the same again next year. So people have low pollination at home. So there they go, I don't know what we're going to do. I can't grow any food at home. Oh, well, I'll tell you what I will do. What I'll do is I'll buy GMO seed, and now my GMO seed is self-generating. It will self-fertilise. Pollinate, right? So we've got past that now. So they've given us the answer to a problem they've created, right? So how do you get around that? Well, what we're doing this year is using it exactly the same way. On the gardens that we were earlier, we're going to put our own beehives, so putting a strip of wildflowers in, so the minute they come out of the hives, there's dinner, right? So it keeps them within that section. It saves them tracking off 2 or 3 miles to get rapeseed or whatever else. So what we've got to look at is how we change how we farm.
So another, I don't know if you know anything about this. There's a lady that calls into the show, and she understands the soil, she understands what they're doing, etc. And there's websites that can show you like exactly what should be in the soil, etc. But when we was having the discussion about mineralisation of the soil, Dr. Glidden is another person in America, and he said to me, Graham, it's all right looking at a Brazil nut, but if that Brazil tree is in an area where there is no selenium, it will look like a Brazil nut, it will taste like one, but it ain't got no selenium in it. Absolutely. And then he showed a map, we showed maps of America where they grow Brazil nuts, and he said that these areas have got no selenium. So everyone's thinking they're getting selenium from Brazil nuts, and there's nothing in the soil, so it's not in the Brazil nut, right? It's crucially important that people understand that. Rapeseed is one of the things that draws out all the minerals, and then they use it for whatever they use it for, but it's generally not for food,
No, make bio oil out of it to run vehicles on.
So what are they actually doing? But raping the soil.
That's what it's
of
designed
minerals.
for. Absolutely.
Right. So it's not in there for when you replant another crop.
Yep.
So to give everyone an understanding of this, if you was to plant broccoli after you've planted rape soil, right, and rape soil will destroy the soil.
It ain't going to grow.
Right. Well, even if it does grow, you'll see that it goes rotten quicker.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason is it's because it's not taking up any boron, and boron is what's one of the core elements of broccoli. Right. So if you understand, and by the way, just for anyone to understand, boron is crucial for your heart.
Right.
Right. It's also crucial for male erections.
So
when people understand, you're getting all these men that can't get whatever, and the others are having heart attacks and oh, there's heart disease. You want to be looking at what you're eating and what
Absolutely.
the food is missing.
Oh, that's a good point, because we all know broccoli is one of the 5 a day. One of the the healthy foods. We know we've got to eat that. But the problem is when people don't look at how that's grown.
Yeah.
Well, as a greengrocer wholesaler, right, we import Spanish ice broccoli, right, this time of year because people demand it.
Yeah.
It has got no goodness in it whatsoever.
No nutrients.
I absolutely guarantee it's got no value to it. The problem is that until people start to go backwards and look at the whole, it's a bit like you saying, the unravelling the constitutional law.
Yeah.
We've got to go backwards 1,000 years in growing food.
Yeah.
And get right back to the core value, which is what we're trying to do on the farm here. And due to the success we had last year, Ray has kindly agreed to let me have 3 times as much land this coming year because he's seen the results we've got. And as a commercial farmer,
evidenced it, which I've just seen, by the way, and I'm massively impressed with it.
From our side, we've got garlic growing up there.
Yeah.
Strawberries growing up there.
I love a bit of garlic. Go on.
Strawberry plants growing up there. When it's minus outside and has been for days on end. Right, every night if we've got a frost, we've still got strawberries growing. Yeah. Now they're growing, yes, because of things we're doing on that section of the farm, but they're growing because we've got an idea of what needs to happen to make that happen. And unfortunately, some of these bigger farms, they've lost their way so much.
Yeah, no, I get that. And again, it's the corporates that are coming in and buying these farms up and doing all these other bits and pieces. And literally, they're going to they're going to shut down farming. People have got to understand what this is all about, and it's not just about the fact that you're not going to get fed. You've lost the skill set.
I'll tell you what else you've lost. The minute you lose the farmers. So at the moment, and I don't in any way suggest that this is on the cards, right? However, what's the biggest single independent army in the UK other than the British Army, right? It's farmers. Yeah. They're the most armed people, right? They've got the biggest amount of equipment, miles more. If you take an average farm, even a small farm like this, we've got more equipment.
How do you take the firearms, the rest of the firearms that are with the people, away from the people, shut down the farms?
Shut down the farms, and then you've got no reason for it, because the minute you've got no land, you don't need a shotgun. Right?
Well, so as a constitutionalist, America gets its Second Amendment from England. Yep. Right? Because we have got the right to keep and bear arms. Yep. Right? There's someone else that I'm talking to at the moment that's just been arrested for something. He's told his barrister to go away, he's told his solicitor to go away because they've said you're bank of rights with this. And I said, listen, you've got the right to keep and bear arms and I will prove it to a jury. Yep. You've got to ask for a jury trial and you've got to present your case. Yep. Right? And this guy is doing that. Right? So, again, the right to keep and bear arms is crucial. And any before any genocide committed by communists, Nazis, socialists,
take away the weaponry.
They take away your weapons, right? And people need to understand. Again, we're going to go back to this original. When I said we're both at the age where we remember being free. I remember as an 18-year-old driving around in my car, right, with a shotgun, right. And pulling onto a farm, just getting it out, saying, all right, Joe, and then start banging away, right, getting back in the motor, putting the shotgun in the back of the motor, taking no gun cabinets and all that bullshit, right. We had firearms, right. So And then they create this stuff.
Let me stop you and ask you a question, Grant. Right, just work with me here. When you had a firearm, did you go around shooting anybody?
No.
Interesting, me neither. Right, now they've tried to say over the years, oh, well, we've got to get rid of firearms because people are going around. The incidents were so insignificant, and most of them were allowed to happen and staged as a result.
Well, there was a free. It's in its third edition. Over 30 decades, there's a book written called More Guns, Less Crime.
Yeah.
It was written in America. The author was a Democrat, in other words, a Labour Party.
Yeah.
He wanted to get rid of firearms. And on initiating this study, and now in its third edition over 30 years, he has come to the absolute conclusion that the safest possible society is an armed society.
Absolutely.
And the most politest, and again, people don't realise, the other armed society is Switzerland. 52% of their population are armed, and it's got the lowest crime rate in the world. Right?
Oh.
So when people understand that firearms are a good thing, not a negative thing, it's like anything else, it's not the gun, it's the person who's using it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's where the rule of law comes in. And the rule of law, and our constitution says, as an Englishman, right, and as a Protestant, although it was extended to the Catholics, right, so Christians have the right to keep and bear arms for self-defence, right? No one can take that away from you. That is your right. The problem is that the government is saying, by policy, self-defence is not a good reason to have a firearm. Our constitution says the complete opposite.
But a policy is no more than the British government being a limited company coming out with a company policy, is it?
Correct. It's not the law.
You know, but that's what people don't understand about the constitutional side.
And people again, so again, this is crucial to farming. And I agree with you that is a way of getting firearms out. They know that farmers have got sometimes 5, 10, I mean, I know someone in this country at the moment, he did have 10 shotguns, 2 rifles, handgun, right? And although they was all licensed, they'd forgot about him. He was getting a bit older, right? So they hadn't kept up on it. He didn't have him in gun cabinets and all that, right? What I'm trying to say to people is that was natural for us.
Yeah.
And just to make sure everyone's aware of this, Napoleon tried to invade Essex, right? And the Essex Rifles, which were a militia, run back to their villages, run back to their cottages, and they all picked up their guns. They went down to the beach, and as they started rowing towards the beach, they started taking aim on them. They run back to their ship, and they
went home.
Right? So who saved England and Essex from a Napoleonic invasion? The Essex Rifles, who were militia. And they was all like us.
And now they've got boats arriving daily.
Exactly that. Exactly that. And people don't realise that the militias in this country are valid. They have destroyed them, the same as the British have destroyed every English regiment. People don't realise there are no regiments. So one regiment, for example, was called the Dragons. Right? So I'm called Daddy Dragon. But the reason they call me Daddy Dragon, and often people ask me, is because they initially started calling me Father Dragon, and the dragon was the original flag of the English, and it still is, right? So people started calling me Father Dragon because I spoke about England, our constitution, and our people, and protecting our people, and then it got cut short to Daddy Dragon, and that's where, and then cut short even more than that to DD. So when people understand that all of this goes back to the destruction of England, and again, when I speak to people, so this, in my opinion, this farm should have 2 flags on display, possibly 3. The first is the flag of England. The second is the flag of Norfolk as a county.
Suffolk.
What? Is this Suffolk? Oh, right, sorry, Suffolk, right? Suffolk as a county of Suffolk.
Yep.
Again, another of the great counties. And then it should have a local one. If there's a local one that has that, because you're proud of your community.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
And that's why you fly them flags. That's why they're there. In the old days, you used to say, you're never going to take our colours, right? It meant something to people. These are our colours. That's why the army have got colours on their shoulders, right? It was part of the regiment. It was part of your thinking. It's part of my community.
Well, that's why the standard was so important. When they used to go into battle, whoever
Never
was
let
carrying
the
the
flag hit
standard,
the
the
floor.
standard would never hit the floor, would it?
No.
It was always important to keep that up, no matter who took control of it.
Yeah.
You just pick it up and put your rifle down if necessary, because that was there.
And both sides always had respect for the opposition's flag. That's why it was often a target. But so again, from the farming, people don't realise, and again, there's so many people that will think go back to the evidence, and the evidence is you must do your own research. Don't be listening to the British mainstream media, and I'm explicitly saying it is all part of this system. Ofcom, for anyone who wants to go and look this up, is the exact replica of the Soviet Union's Glavlit, right? And Glavlit controlled all communications in the Soviet Union. Ofcom is the same thing. Our group demonstrated outside the Ofcom buildings in London, right? Police couldn't believe it, right? And we had a load of English flags out there, and we said we are demonstrating against Ofcom and GB News, because GB News has been created by these same people. It is a big con, the whole thing. People are being conned. So people need to understand it is England under attack, and there are other people now starting to see it. If you want to go and watch a video with Trump talking at the G7, which has been on my YouTube, or not YouTube, your Rumble channel, and I show him talking, and he's asked a question, right, by the BBC, right? This is the G7 summit, and they asked Trump a question. They said, who's your most important strategic partner? Is it the British or is it the European Union? And Trump said, let's talk about England. Why does no one talk about England anymore? Why does no one talk about the English anymore? We've always been a part of England, right? So again, triggered. You heard all the cameras going off. They hated him because he said the word England, right? So remember, again, Churchill wasn't the nicest person in the world. I don't disagree with that. But one of the things he said is there is one word that's more important to me than any other, and that word is England, right? And we've got to take our culture back, our communities back, our farms back, our resilience back, and we've got to take back our children from the state.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think what I've noticed, now funnily enough, I called to see a friend the other day, and he's got a son of 31, same age as my son, right? And they're very much, like all kids, they all dress the same, sound the same, you know, they've all come out the same tick box. And I said to him, he said, I watched your latest video. I said, oh yeah, what did you think? He said, I think you were losing the plot. I said, all right, based on what? He said, you were talking about stakeholder capitalism. I said, all right. He said, sooner we get socialism completely into place, the better. I said, what do you base that on? He said, well, capitalism in any shape or form doesn't work. I said, can I ask a question? I said, where do you live? He said, with mum and dad, in a house they built in the garden for me. All right. And have you got a car? Well, no, I don't need it because Dad's got a van and I'll use that when I need it. So you're happy that capitalism has bought for you somewhere to live, something to drive, the money what goes in your pocket.
You're using someone else's resources all the way through your life.
But there you want to talk about socialism. The two don't stack up. Unfortunately, for anyone who wants to be socialist, no, knock yourself out, go and get on with somewhere else. But the problem is that we are a capitalist society. Whether we like it or not, that is what we are. You know, it's the same as people saying, all these Muslims coming over. I don't care. I've got a bloody black Nigerian girlfriend. From my side, I don't care about creed or colour. What I do care about is our values as British, English, whatever you want to class us as, right? Those values, those Christian values, what we were brought up with, whether you are a practicing Christian or not, and I had this conversation last night in a video I made, I do not class myself as a practicing Christian, right? Do I class myself as a Christian? I must be by default. I went to a Christian school, I was christened, I was married in a Christian church, everything I lived my life by Christian values. And that to me is where we have...
And the target of the communists is the Christian nation. They killed more Christians in the Soviet Union than any other group of people. literally 60 million Orthodox Christians.
Yep.
And when people understand why they did that, Orthodox Christians and Islam do not allow usury. That is interest.
Yep.
Right? So when people understand what the real is, I've always said to people, what you're actually seeing is a clash between the banking systems. One system wants to make you a debt slave with usury and interest, and the other system says no.
Yep.
We believe in your capitalist system, we will invest in your house, and we will take a profit off your community when you sell it. Right?
Yep.
That is a different setup to what we've got now. And if you go back 40, 50 years ago, as a normal, everyday working man, you could go and buy a 3 Belgian mouse, detached, have a job, holiday a year. Your wife didn't go to work, she looked after the kids, because that's their job, that's their role, right? They are the nurturing one in the family, and the dad goes out and earns a living, right? And again, the whole of that has been destroyed by the communist system. Yeah.
And that's what I've seen. You know, for me, I was always whilst mum worked around the school times. So when we went to school, mum might go apple picking, let's say. You know, might have a cleaning job, whatever it needs to be, just to get a few pennies on the table, right? And that changed as we got older. She got a proper job, and you know, but that doesn't happen now. I see my daughters; they all have to work. You know, they've all got partners.
It should never have been like it was never designed.
It was never designed to be like that. But they again.
But that's the communist system.
We've seen it broken down and broken away, and you know, whilst you know. As I say on my channel, I only talk about food and farming. I think you have to understand the bigger picture, because this isn't about just taking away the food here. This is about taking away people's rights. You know, we talk about cash. We know they're going to change over to a digital currency. They've got to take control of us. They've got to take
central bank digital currency
is coming.
And digital identity. I was speaking earlier to Andrew, and I said to him, on our website, we've got something basically called a digital bill of rights, right? And the core fraction of that, so it doesn't affect the English bill of rights. You can add to people's rights, you can't take away, right? The common law system allows for that, but what the common law system doesn't allow is for your rights, your natural rights to be taken away, right? That's why they're enshrined in a constitution. So the crucial element to this is the digital bill of rights that's on our website. And it says you can't have central digital currencies, right? Banking currencies. You can't do this. You don't own my retina scan or my facial scan or my gait, right? You don't own my fingerprints. You don't own my blood type. You don't own my DNA. I own that. It's my copyright. It's my natural right to command all of that. You can't have it, right? And that's what the digital bill of rights. So sometimes as in the previous ancestral generation, they create the Bill of Rights to protect our rights because they see what happened. They said, how are we going to stop this and protect our future generations? What we've got to do is not put the cross in the sand and the line in the sand and then say, now there's a digital, because we've seen that. They couldn't see that then. We can see this now. And then I've no doubt in 400 years' time, there will be something else, and it will probably be something to do with space. And they'll turn around and say, you need these rights in space. You can't allow these people to just do what they want to do. But that was it, really. I was going to say, I mean, was there anything you want to finish on?
I think what people need to give consideration
to as well.
Yeah, I think what people need to give consideration to is, I've got no doubt at all, and I mean no doubt, that within the forthcoming months the food system will crash. I'll stand corrected. Will be crashed. Right? Will be crashed deliberately. People need to start stocking up on food. They need to make sure that food's secure, because we're going to end up with this problem of people looting the people's houses without any doubt at all. We've got to make sure that, you know, you need food, you need food protected. You know, I think that the mass of people will be gone within 28 days anyway, so that won't matter, because they'll be fighting among each other. You know, get yourself to a position you know that you can stand that first 28 days. People
learn how to fast.
Learn how to fast is a very important thing.
Crucially important.
More important than food.
Exactly.
More important than food.
So I've gone, I mean, my most recent fast was 3 weeks with no food.
Wow.
So if people fit, and by the way, it tells you in the Bible, right? It's healthy, it's natural.
Oh, it is.
You should do it.
It
and,
is
and it resets your body
Yeah.
and your body clock.
If you look back to nomadic times, you know, they were used to fasting for long periods of time. They were going to trek across the desert, for instance, or one end of the country to another, and it was the middle of the winter when you've got nothing, only a bit of snow on the ground, so you could get yourself some water.
Yeah.
You know, there's no apples on the hedgerow, there's no blackberries, whatever it might be. So I do think people have got to start thinking about that preparation very quickly.
Yeah.
And I do think, you know, from our side, as I say, we've set up the Food Finders, so it's foodfindershub.co.uk, where we've got farmers and you sign up as a customer. We've got ambassadors on there. We've got 450 people who are just passionate about food, that are going out and talking to farmers, saying, please put your food on here. 450 people, you know, and I think to myself, you know, we're in such a blessed position with where we are, and if we get a few months run at this to get, you know, we've got in 28 days we've got 7,000 members of the public signed up. And I've got no doubt that will continue to grow.
No, people are getting it in a big way.
But I think what they're getting is they're getting the fact of what's coming.
Yeah.
Everyone can feel that we've got a movement coming, and I think at the same point that movement's coming from our side, the government is absolutely up in the game massively, because as far as they're concerned, they know. And people say, oh yeah, but we've got till 2030. You haven't. You've got until 2027, 28.
Yeah.
That they're going to have it all in place by then, right? Without any doubt at all. I think the next 2025 is going to be the pinnacle point of this.
I absolutely agree.
Right, this isn't 2030. Don't think we've got 5 years.
So just to make sure I express this to everyone, it's one of the reasons I've been impressed. I was asked to look at your YouTube channel. I was asked to listen to you by some of our members. Right, so there's different groups that are all coming together, right, and they really put me in the direction of people that obviously they're always good people that they direct me towards, right. And then I started watching you, I see what's going on. We've got this situation now crept in where the government are trying to put the farmers out of business. Yeah. By the way, the old style farmers should look at copyhold, right, which is one of their ancient rights. Yeah. Again, they'll all go and say, oh, I've spoken to my barrister friend, and my barrister friend's actually said poo-poos all that, right? No. Right, you've got to start looking, and I'm not talking about free man of the land, I'm talking about the Constitution and the common law, the way it's existed from our ancestors and put it in place to safeguard us, right? Yeah. But crucially, to what you're saying, these people, your website, which I'll put a link up to as well, and the farmers can come and have a look at it. But one of the things that I want to do is I'm going to be getting out and speaking to more farmers. I think I said earlier, there's another group of people who've got small holdings, and you can go on there, you can help them out there, and then you can sleep on the farm and they'll feed you. Yeah. I'm not into money. I've never been into money. I've had money.
And same here.
I'm not interested.
It didn't change me.
No, well, it's about lifestyle, and it's about cognitive ability and understanding what these people are doing to us, right? So again, you're one of them people that has highlighted that. You are 100% not an utter. You live a life on here that most people would die for.
Absolutely.
Right? Again, I just think if everyone starts to understand, move forward on the 80% you agree with, forget about the other 20%, because I'm telling you now, the communists have been in agreement for a long time. They don't want you on this planet.
Absolutely.
And unless we actually come together as the 80%, right, and agree on the 80%, the 20%
we can work on.
We'll work on that at some other stage, but we need to move forward. So I'm just going to say thank you very much. I will put the website on there. Do you know what's your website called?
Foodfindershub.co.uk.
Foodfindershub.co.uk.
Yep.
And then, so you've got the farmers associated with that, and then you've got the retail, and there's some ambassadors on there, and they're going out and talking to the farmers and building it up.
Yep.
Excellent.
It's a simple system, and I had a question the other day on it, and someone said to me, are all the farmers on there organic? I said, no, but they're farmers. And what I think we can achieve is if once we've got the masses onto the website, we can start saying to the farmers, these people would really like you to grow organically.
Yeah.
And that is when you've got the farmers not relying on the system, because the problem is at the minute they're relying on the system that's broken.
I agree with you entirely. But you've also highlighted a point. So anyone listening to this from a strategic point of view, how can I explain this so everyone gets it? In strategy, you can understand it, or tactically, you can understand this. If you've got a 1 metre enemy and a 6 metre enemy, which enemy is the most important enemy to put down first? Because they're going to kill you, right? And it's obvious it's the 1 metre enemy, right? The old saying, when you see the whites of their eyes, right? That's what you've just explained there. People are saying that it must be organic. Let me tell you something. Food is the priority, organic or not organic, and the distribution of that food, getting it from the farmers to you. Not the fact that it's organic, right? Because you need the food.
What I will say on that is the other side of what I said earlier. The food over here and you over here, the supermarkets are adding the poisons.
Correct. So you've removed that. You've removed additional chemicals, sprays, etc.
Yes.
That the supermarkets was adding, that the farmers didn't add.
Yep.
The supermarkets have added
Yep.
it. You've removed that anyway,
Yep.
and that's what most people object to.
Yes.
Right. So the organic system of the soil, this particular place, and I've just seen it set up, which is electroculture, I believe it's called. Right. Fantastic. Right. I looked at that. I'm well impressed with that. Right. And I'm well impressed with the way you are regenerating the soil to generate its minerals and reproduce it. Right? And there's many other things that you can do as well with that. But that is fantastic, right? So produce from this farm not only will when it all kicks in, I've seen it growing out there. When it kicks in full scale, is not only is it organic, it is electroculture. It will be the highest quality of minerals.
Highly dense nutritional value.
Yeah,
that's what we need.
Highly dense nutritional value containing all of the minerals that you need.
Yep.
And again, fruits, vitamins, etc. If you're growing fruit that way, you're going to get the vitamins the way they should be, and your body will just absorb it straight in, and that it is nutrition of your body. So if you are fully neutralised, vitamised, and amino acids, the essential 90 as it's described, if your body has that every day, most of the illnesses are eliminated. And that's what people have got to understand.
And why do they farm in the way they farm is deliberately to remove those so you become ill, so they can give you a medicine.
Correct.
And we know that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No.
I've really enjoyed this, I've got to say.
So have I. Thank you very much. Right, so again, everyone, don't forget, this channel is also, the Bowlerhatted Farmer is also on YouTube. So I just want to make sure everyone can literally go and have a look at that. Touch wood. I'm hoping that camera is working properly. See you all later. I'm going to check this thing out. Why is it flashing at me like a good one? Let me hit the button on that.